episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And today, yet another crazy story here in the world of true crime. And we had a little bit of an issue behind the scenes, so we were expected to be joined by another guest who is a former TV personality in Las Vegas and now has a PR firm. Unclear whether or not he's going to join, but guess what? You've got Carm here. Carm, it has been a minute since you've been on. How does it feel to be back?
It feels like I am new because the old one already wore out.
There you go. So then you are new. Look at this. And Cat's Addict says, our beloved Carm is here. It is marvelous. For full disclosure, Carm is not going to be the nuts and bolts type of person on this. However, Phil Ramos is. So we'll go through the case without this PR/news person, and we will do just fine, and we'll get him back another time. But everyone, of course, knows Phil Ramos. He is a retired senior homicide detective with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. 35 years of service. The last 15 years were in homicides. His assignments included 12 years undercover as a detective in narcotics and organized crime details. He smuggled $1 million through a casino floor in order to infiltrate the mob. Carm, how would you feel if I was doing that? If that was my job?
I would try to think of other things. Otherwise, I would be too nervous.
And let me ask you this. What would make you more nervous? Being an undercover narcotics officer like Phil Ramos was, or the fact that he still is riding his Harley Davidson? You see the shirt he's wearing today. He rides a motorcycle, Carm. Your thoughts on that? Does that give you anxiety?
It's 50-50 with the narcotics.
It is. But if I told you, hey, I'm going to get a motorcycle, and by the way, in Florida, you do not need a helmet, would you be upset with me getting on I-95 without a helmet on a motorcycle?
Well, I can understand where Mr. Ramos would like that because it's hot and it gives you a nice breeze when you are going. And I don't know how busy the roads are. When I traveled in that part of the United States, the roads weren't as cluttered as they are in Miami in the winter or as they are in New Jersey. So I would imagine that you have open roads.
Yes.
And
Phil, what is it about riding a motorcycle? Is it just a natural high? What does it do for you?
Oh man, it's therapeutic. It's the wind in your face and enjoying the scenery, and it's not like you're locked up in a car and you have to pay attention to what's in front of you. You still have to pay attention on the bike, but you get to look around and enjoy the scenery and being up in the mountains or up by the lake, and it's just freedom, man. Just freedom.
Look at this. Mish Cavernos literally just texted this as you're saying this. It's the freedom of being in the open air coming to us from Cape Town, South Africa. So this is going to be a different sort of show because it's just Carm and Phil today. But the story, nevertheless, is still very important. It is about, and this is near and dear to my heart because it's about the murder of an investigative reporter in Phil's hometown of Las Vegas. A former Las Vegas area elected official is accused of killing investigative reporter Jeff German. Turns out that Jeff German wrote articles critical of Robert Tellis, and that triggered him. And we'll ask Phil, of course, why that would lead to something like murder. A Nevada judge recently just postponed Robert Tellis's trial. It was supposed to start this month. But no new date has officially been set.
Wait a minute. There has been a new date set.
What's the new date? I think there is actually. Apologies.
August 5th, 2024.
There you go. straight from Carm, who did her homework and letting us all know. So August 5th is the new date. It was scheduled to start this month, I believe. Robert Tellis, who's 47, he remains jailed without bail and has pleaded not guilty to the murder charge. Since this is a unique show and we have Carm on, we are going to be doing a book tour, and I'm going to run through this super quick. May 14th in New York City, the venue yet to be announced. Then Boston on May 16th at Hummingbird Books at 7:30. Then May 21st in Toronto at Queen's Books. And then we will be in Los Angeles August 15th and in Tallahassee before that on June 6th. And of course in Miami at Books and Books, which is a big spot on July.
Well, I have to tell you, this book is turning into a big monster. It's like dangerous, like artificial intelligence. It will eat us up alive because you are planning so many things at once that even a 30-year-old couldn't keep up with it. Plus, I have to complain while I'm on the air because I never have an opportunity. He being Joel, he made me do the audible part of the book, my part in the book on Audible, and he took me to this godforsaken. He actually didn't even take me. I had to
You
get
loved
there.
it, Carm. You loved it. I promise we'll get to the story eventually, but go ahead, Carm.
Okay, well, he took me there for weeks to tape the Audible part, and it was a real hard job for a little old lady.
It was a very hard job. You did it well. And are you ready? By the way, Blackwood Door in the Republic of Ireland just gifted us 10 euros, I believe. And it's to get you a membership for Surviving the Survivor, Carm. So I'll get you a membership. Space Coast is on duty. But by the way, following this show at 2 p.m. today, it will be the Notorious COE with Ruth Markel. So a special show, the Notorious COE and Ruth Markel are picking up at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Look at this. Patricia Cox says, I've missed you so much. Carm. Carm.
I know who she is. I know. I quoted Patricia Cox.
Oh,
she was talking about her feelings about the whole experience, the horrible experience.
Poor Phil today. I feel for Phil that he's going to have to sit through this.
Phil, you have to understand that we are digressing and going on tangents. But that's
Phil is Latino. They have big families like my wife. They like to talk and hang out. So he'll get it. He'll get it.
Join the fray. Join the fray.
Yes, we will be, Miss Cece, we will be at the Grove for a book signing. And as soon as I get clickable links, I'm going to put them out there so you can RSVP for that. Carm, the question, though, that I had for you, are you going to be able to handle the travel for that 2-week period when we go to Boston, New York, and Toronto? Will you be okay?
Since I have no previous experience of traveling so intensely in the last 20 years, we'll have to see. It's an experiment. But going back to Jeff Germain, it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, we're going to get there in 1 second. But Mar Plam here says, Carmen Joel, please come to the UK for a book tour. And I am thinking there is a crime con in September. It'll be a big, I'll have to get Carm on that plane. We'll see if that can happen. But it's COE. And look at this, another one, Carm. Please come to the UK. Carm, you were given one job today. I told you last night. And by the way, I was up till 2 in the morning responding to emails. What was the one job?
To bring my own computer, which I forgot because this morning it's not part of my routine. And I hate to apologize. That's not in my nature. So Joel did not, it's all Joel's fault because he did not remind me this morning.
Okay, so moving on to the story here. By the way, if you want Carm to curse, custom curses, it's called custom curses for an inscription and a signed limited edition hardcover copy. That's at signedsurvivorbook.com, signedsurvivorbook.com. So
all right,
the story,
Joel. All right, you don't. Joel doesn't.
Las Vegas Review Journal investigative reporter Jeff German, he lived for his job, and it appears that he died for his job. He's well known locally as an investigative reporter, and he wrote about mobsters, crooked politicians, and murderers. And he also talked about issues within the workplace environment. This is Jeff German here alongside the person who's accused of murdering him. So that is who we're looking at. Jeff German on the right, of course. And this is Robert Tellis here. And here's another set of photos of them. And I'll bring them back up. Jeff German in the middle.
And
then
remember the picture of the weird person with the big hat, because it has a significance and meaning in this crime story.
100%. Carm, look at this. I want to see Carm's reaction to this one. We have, if I can get over there. Why can't I get over there? What's going on here? Hang on a second. Hang on, everybody. It's Wednesday, and it's where did this person go? This is important. If I can find it, probably won't be able to find it. Anyway, there's someone, Carm. There's someone in the chat from Nigeria. Your reaction to that, Carm?
There are people I know from Nigeria who live in the States now. And I asked this woman once, what brought her to the United States? And she said she wants a safer life for her children.
There you go. So here she is. Okay. So, Phil Ramos, when this story broke, you've got, and this, by the way, Jeff German was murdered on September 2nd, 2022. It was literally an assassination attempt. He was found the next day. So he's murdered Labor Day weekend, September 2nd, 2022, found the next day by a neighbor. When this story broke, Phil, how big a deal was it in Las Vegas? I mean, because this has had national, national and international coverage and repercussions.
Well, it was really, really high profile simply because of Jeff. Anybody in media relations knew Jeff. I knew Jeff. He had done a lot of reports on some of the cases I had, some of the high profile cases. So we got to know each other a little bit. I wouldn't go so far as say that he was a friend, because, he took some jabs at me for some of the investigations that we did, but he's a very competent and thorough reporter. And he's something of a bulldog. Once he gets a hold of something, he doesn't let go, man. And unfortunately, we believe that was the leading theory behind his murder.
Jenny Price, look at this, Carm. I just canceled a work meeting to see Carm. This is huge. The cult of personality that is Carm is growing bigger and bigger. So again, it was Labor Day weekend. It's a sweltering hot day. It's broad daylight. Jeff German murdered at just 69 years old. Everything is relative. To some people, that might seem old. To Carm, that seems very young. To me, at 54, it already seems very young. It is never the right time to go, and obviously not in this manner. But neighbors discover the body. A neighbor discovers the body, immediately calls 911, because that is what you're supposed to do. But remember, he was stabbed to death the day before. So he's pronounced dead. He had 7 stab wounds to the neck and chest. And then police do what they do. They came up with a list of people who could have possibly threatened German. And one of them was this Clark County administrator named Robert Tellis. Carm, we're looking at the photo. Carm said, obviously this is important. This is police say that this is what Robert Tellis, the man on the right, wore the day of the murder. It looks kind of insane.
And this is how in Las Vegas, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how the gardeners sometimes dress up to avoid that very strong sunlight. That when they're working, they put on long sleeves, and they wear gloves, and they wear hats. And the only fantastic and amazing thing that happened with this man in this outfit, that he has a particular walk. he kind of drags his right foot a little, and they compared his walk to Tellis's, also has the same right leg, dragging of his right leg, that the person in this hat was the way he was walking. But let's not assume that this is the only proof that it was the same Tellis who committed the murder, because there are many other um, reasons to think that he was the one.
And that is exactly correct, Carm. So, you know, it looks totally crazy because this guy's walking down the street that Jeff Germán lived on, and he's wearing this outfit. But Phil, you've got the blistering heat in. Oh, what did I just do there? You've got the blistering heat there, and so it is not that unusual to see landscapers in these sorts of outfits, is it, Phil Ramos?
No, not at all. And so just to clarify it and make sure the record is straight, that picture that we have came from a home security video, and clearly you can't recognize any facial characteristics on that photo. But Carm was right. There was some distinctive physical characteristics for that person who came out as the suspect. And then as the case developed, there was evidence found indicating that that was Tellis. Now, so let me give some full disclosure here. This happened when I was still in the cold case unit, and we work hand in hand with the current detectives, and we'll pick their brain, they'll pick ours. So I was able to get a lot of information, and because of that, I have to be careful what I say, because it is still, the investigation's still going on, even though we have a court date. So some of my comments are going to have to be restricted as far as the details of the case. But
I got all my comments from Google, so I can fully disclose them. And another very interesting of this photograph that you're seeing here, the hat, it's another thing. They went into, the police went into Mr. Tellis's garage and house, and they found this hat cut into a few pieces, but it was definitely the same hat. And so they have the hat. And when Joel gives me the green light, I tell you what else the police found.
Carm, as usual, you are 19 steps ahead of us. But check this out. We are being joined by Mark Fierro. He brings 30 years plus of professional experience in media relations, marketing, sales, promotions, and journalism. Mark is one of the most trusted names in public and media relations in the entire country. He is the owner and president of Fierro Communications based in Las Vegas. And Mark, welcome to you. I know, appreciate you coming on. I know it was tough, and I know you got a very busy schedule. Just broadly speaking, did you know Jeff? And when this story broke, how big a deal was it? And for you personally, how was it?
I knew him across the entire spectrum. I knew him as a competitor when he was a newsman, and I was at the CBS station back in the 80s. He was at the Sun, and there were, in Las Vegas in the 80s, there were only good guys and bad guys, and it was the mob and the FBI and nothing in between. And so we would be outside the courthouse for hours waiting for these, people that ended up being killed later and everything else, these mob figures. And then later on, we kind of were at loggerheads for a couple of years when I was running campaigns and he was reporting on them. And then eventually I became, he and I always trusted each other. And I started working with him on stories. And he and I had a long run of stories. He was an incredible investigative reporter. The term is used broadly now, but he really, really was a true journalist in that regard. And I will say this: Jeff came from the from the Hank Greenspun School of Journalism. And to give you an idea, there was a background where the FBI and the Sun came to loggerheads. It was over a story. The story is that this came up over an exclusive that they gave to the competing newspaper. Hank Greenspun went after the FBI every day with a new story for at least 3 years. Jeff wrote those stories, so when Jeff got onto something, he would grab onto their and he would not let go. And it's different if you're 6'3" and you weigh 250 and you can throw elbows and you're the tough guy. That was not Jeff. Jeff was a regular sized man, but he had the spirit of a pit bull. And he got this guy, he nailed him down. You know what? Tellis destroyed his own career. The only thing that Jeff did was he exposed what a horrible person Tellis is. And that's what I have to say about Jeff. He looked out for the underdog. Man, if he thought that you were getting beat up the way Tellis beat up on these women and did it, I would go back to that story. That's when you find out just how horrible a person Tellis is. Look at Gehrman's writing. Look at what he was talking about Tellis. This is how this guy got into office, I will never know, but Jeff exposed him and he used Tellis's actions to end his career. And for that, we're all thankful.
So he is a dogged reporter, and I always say this, I was a broadcast guy and Mark was a broadcast guy, but it's really the print guys that dig and can dig a lot deeper, and he did. And so obviously this case became a whodunit, and people wanted to know who would kill this investigative reporter in Las Vegas. And then the police, Phil Ramos and his colleagues, do what they do best in Las Vegas. They started to investigate, and the Las Vegas Review-Journal was very invested in this too, where he worked. The reporters there were very invested. And it turns out that Jeff Germann had written 4 articles about Robert Tellis, alleging a hostile work environment. And you just heard Mark talking about what a horrible person this guy Tellis is. Well, that started to get exposed. Jeff was contacted by 4 female Clark County employees, that is in Las Vegas. And here's the quote from one of the workers, a woman named Rita Reed. Literally sounds like Mark Fierro a moment ago. She says that Robert Tellis was a horrible human being. A monster is the right word. And went on to say that Jeff Germann was guided by an innate sense of right and wrong. If he knew someone was engaging in criminal activity, unethical activity, inappropriate behavior, he wanted to do that story. He wanted to bring it to light. Phil Ramos, this guy. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
This is very important for everybody who has that spirit of reporter. That if I was at the newspaper, if I was the TV, if I was the investor, think about this. How many times do you get contacted every single week? Somebody bitching about their boss. You write it off and you go on to the next story. How many times do you hear, I have the worst this and the worst work setting and I'm going to sue my employer? But Jeff, listen, go back to the beginning of this story when they reached out to him, and you'll understand the reporter's sense that he had, something is wrong here. Something is beyond the pale. Are they blowing this out of proportion? You're wasting a whole bunch of time. You have to produce every day. But he found that thread, something in Jeff, and it's Gehrmann. Jeff, it was something in Gehrmann's spidey sense, the hair on the back of his neck that said, this is a real story. This is a real wrong. I'm sticking my nose into it. I'm going to the newspaper. I'm asking for time. And everything else came from that. But that's who Jeff Gehrmann is. It was just that. It was just a phone call. The kind of phone call that every reporter that's worth their salt, they get every single week in and week out. But he saw something here.
Yeah. And the Rita Reed, this woman who he helped with these stories, she says that after Germann spoke with the 4 women, they were relieved to find out that Jeff was planning to take on their story. And she says he did something and he fought for us, and he's 100% our hero. So he died their hero. Mark, back to you on this. Tell us what Tellis was doing to these women in this public office in Clark County?
Well, according to Jeff's published reports, and that's all that we know about it, and I spoke with him about the story. We were talking back and forth. I go, Gary, what a killer story. This is great stuff. You're just nailing this. And what it was is this. He was belittling people. It's like the big guy that just goes over and smacks the kid in the head every day. You know why? Because he can. And he had the county behind him. So he antagonized them. He said they couldn't talk to each other. He didn't want any humanity in that office. I urge anyone that's interested in the Gehrman story, go back to those stories, because that you really do hear not just Jeff's voice, but you hear how quickly he grasped what was being done. And then in the middle of it, these women, this is why you don't get women angry when they're on the right side and keep pounding on them. They go, you know what? He keeps leaving with this employee every day. What's going on here? So they videotaped him, and they videotape him getting in and out of an SUV with this woman, and both of them are straightening their clothes when they get out.
Well, can I add something?
Yeah, real quick, Carm, before you add to that, I just want Mark, because Mark may not know. Mark, this is my beloved mother, Carmela Waldman, otherwise known as Carm. She is a cult of personality here. She's a Holocaust survivor, hence the name of the show, Surviving the Survivor. And she's very opinionated, as you're about to find out. Carm,
Let me say one thing before we move on. Let me say one thing. The reason I'm a journalist, is because somebody they knew that I wanted to be a reporter when I was a little kid. I think I was 5 years old. She gave me a top of the line reel-to-reel recorder, and I couldn't believe it. She goes, if you're going to be a reporter, you have to study your voice. And when she handed it to me, I said, Innika, why do you have...
Oh, he just bounced out right there. Oh, he got a call. Oh, you're no audio. Mark, we lost your audio for a sec. I'm not sure why, but it's a glitch. You might have to pop back. I think you have to pop back out and pop. Let's see. Mark, you're going to have to go out and come back in. It's a weird glitch. I'm sorry. But Carm, I think he was saying that the person who gave him the recorder had a number on her arm, and that's what got him into it. But we'll hear the story.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
That's 100% what he was about to say. Look at this, Carm. Annie Oakley. Carm for president 2028. Any ambition, Carm?
Yeah, well, I'm ready for 28. I'm not ready for 24. There are too many old people already in 24.
I don't want to get political, but you seem much more with it with either than either Biden or Trump. Let me tell you,
while he's trying to come back, we were talking about the 4 women who were working for the county, and this Tellis was really intimidating them. He at one point he started to scream at them that they're not permitted to talk to each other in the office, and humiliated them in many very basic things, and they didn't know what to do anymore. Mark, listen, I read somewhere that one of the women was so desperate with the situation in the office that she truly considered suicide until Jeff came into the picture. Mr. Jeff German came into the picture, and he said he will try to point out the horrible culture of this office, because they couldn't fire him because he was an elected official. Correct?
Yes. Mark, finish your story, Mark. I wanted to hear that.
Yeah. So
You're 5 years old.
She hands me the recorder. I'm gonna lose it here. She hands me the recorder, and I said, "Why do you have numbers?" And my mom said, "Mark, shut up." And she said, "No, he's going to be a reporter." So my career was created by a survivor.
Oh, the impact of a survivor, yeah. Well, I have
by the
no
way,
number. I
Mark,
have no number. I have no number.
Mark, that's a beautiful story. And by the way, when you
Yeah.
got booted off, I said to Carm that would be the story. She said, no, I was wrong, but I was right.
No, no, no.
So,
I didn't say you were wrong. And I was on air, so everybody heard you. I didn't say you were wrong. I just wanted to use the moment to mention that the atmosphere in an environment can be so bad. She also had the fantasy, this woman who was threatening suicide, that she would save the others because nobody investigated this guy, Robert Tellis, and she thought no matter how much they were complaining and how they were saying that their lives were hell, nobody investigated. And she thought if she kills herself, that would be a warning that they would maybe it would do something for the other employees there. But
her suicidal ideation was so focused that she knew where she was going to hang herself in the office so that he would walk in and see her. And I want to say something else before the possibility that I get bounced out, because I in my heart I need to say this. If Tellis was here today, I would say you need to understand something. They put off the trial now. I believe it's to August 5th is the tentative date. Look around yourself, Tellis, and look at that size of the cell that you're in, because this is as good as it gets until you leave this earth. You'll never be free from prison, ever, for 1 second. The people of Nevada will not allow it. You're going to be beaten into a pulp. I can't wait to see his final resting place in prison. He deserves every minute. Jeff should be on the phone right now going, "What's up?" But because of this jerk who committed the stupidest crime in the world, led a trail right to his own door, the dumbest. And by the way, the RJ, I know that police were on it, and I know the police were meticulous, but the RJ reporters figured it out in the first half hour. And that's not an exaggeration from what I understand.
Yeah. Phil Ramos, what about that? I mean, it's rare that an investigative reporter gets murdered, but you're kind of messing with the wrong guy because that's what they do for a living. The word investigative is in there, Phil Ramos, and they were very quick. They were, they were scouring through old reports, trying to figure out who it was. So what kind of role did the Las Vegas Review-Journal play in helping solve this case alongside your colleagues in the homicide division, Phil?
Well, for the first few hours, it was a whodunit because there was no ID connecting anyone with this. So they did extensive interviews with everyone at the RJ, and you always hear us talk about victimology, and it wasn't very difficult to establish the victimology with Jeff. I mean, Jeff, everybody knew Jeff, and once he was positively identified, then that's when you start asking how many people would want to hurt him, or in this case, kill him. And everybody just pointed the fingers right away at Tellis. So it was a matter of, and this was such a unique case, man, because one of the things that you do when you've got a case like this is you dig into your victim's background and everything he was doing, and who his friends were, who his enemies were, who the potential suspects were, and you do that by going through everything in his house. So the unique situation here was Jeff's protection, First Amendment protection, as being a reporter, and all of his background information was being guarded by the RJ. So it turned out to be a little tumultuous there for a while because the RJ wanted us to solve it, but they had to limit the amount of cooperation because one of the things they were trying to do is check his cell phone records, check his digital footprint, and then the RJ was in the position of, whoa, wait a minute. This guy had a lot of contacts. A lot of people spoke to him, and we can't let those people be exposed because of this investigation. So it was tough. There was a court fight, and the RJ didn't want homicide looking into all of his devices looking for potential suspect information because of the possibility that his sources would be revealed, and they didn't want cops getting a hold of who his sources were. So it kind of it didn't hinder the investigation. It just made it much more difficult. The good part about it is there's just a plethora of direct physical evidence, including DNA, tying Tellis to Jeff's murder. So, and that fight's still going on today. They're still looking into his devices, and the limited information that comes out is going to be something that could either help the prosecution or help the defense. And that's inherent. Reporters have lots of people that, they ruffle their feathers, and they're going to jump up and say, that's a piece of garbage. I'm gonna beat his ass and stuff like that. When you get exposed, like Jeff was exposing Tellis. So, and that's going to become a big issue that the defense is going to bring up. Well, they're going to go right to, how do you know it was only Tellis that you suspected? Because he had a lot of enemies. They're going to play that up as best they can because of the direct physical evidence, including the DNA that ties Tellis to Jeff's murder. I mean, you can't argue the science on this particular case. There's just no way to do it. So he's going to try and get some distraction in there. The defense attorney is a former prosecutor that I'd worked some cases with, and he's a good, competent attorney, and you can count on all kinds of.
I have a question. My understanding is that they did not want the tribunal or the legal system to get hold of Mr. Germain's computer and phone because of his protection of his sources. And they came to an agreement, correct me if I'm wrong, this is how I understood it. They came to an agreement that the review journal where he worked would hire their own attorneys who would check the contents of his devices. Is this correct?
Both sides would have people represented at the table. It's not unusual when an attorney dies in this exact same situation. You have files from all kinds of things that are sensitive. And so they get just uninvolved people from both sides to go through and say, this has nothing. So you don't end up with a fishing expedition. I understand how forceful the police were about this issue. I understand completely. It's the ironic thing is the defense isn't pushing as hard. But the reality of it is if you go back to the other picture that you had up, there is so much evidence against this guy. As Tellis is on the frame, you see the car that's behind him right there, his leg behind side his right leg. That's Tellis's car. That's Tellis's car that was at Gehrman's house. That was Tellis's car that was back at Tellis's house being washed on video. He's such an imbecile. He's washing the DNA off of his car, vacuuming it, being busted by the media. But I want to back up just for a second about the protection of sources, because you can see it real quickly, but it is the cornerstone of what makes this country a free country. And that is the reporters do, in fact, have a special station in life, and that their contacts are protected. And there is some question as to whether that right of protection, that shield law, Nevada has a very strong shield law. This great shield law survives the death of the reporter. It's going to happen in Nevada, and it's going to go across the country, because all you would have to do to find out who reporter's sources are in a big story is kill him, okay, or her. And so this is going to be a law. It's going to sweep the country. And I say that it's going to be called the Gehrman rule. It survives your death. It has to. That's part of the cornerstone of America, to be able to report what you hear dispassionately, from straight down the middle, as Jeff did in this case. He reported what he saw, and so he will. I believe that there's a reason for this law. I understand that the police were hot to trot, and they wanted to find out if there were other suspects. There are no other suspects in this case. I'm sure that Tellis sits up late at night fantasizing about how he's going to get the DNA kicked out or whatever. But I'm going to tell you something. The people of Las Vegas know that Robert Tellis is the killer in this case.
I think everything points to that. And by the way, everyone, for about 9 months, he was actually defending himself, but now has a defense attorney at his side. Just to that point, I mean, I brought up this photo, Carm, to you on this one. This guy was an absolute bully, and he was bullying women in the workplace. You know, he was literally, you know, intimidating them, scaring them. And here's a moment where, you know, he is trying to act remorseful in a courtroom, and you see him here, Carm, the most meek, weak, pathetic looking soul. But Carm, what is it about the human psychology that a guy like this thought he was going to domineer these women, and then when he was called out on it, goes and murders the guy that was writing the stories? What is it about this type of personality?
Well, you know, I didn't get any history of him, but I know in 2020, his wife charged him of being of wife abuse when he was drunk at the time, and he refused arrest, and there was I think he was booked. I don't know if he was released on bond or what was the rest of the story, but in 2020 he drank too much, and he had a history of, obviously his self-image is not good, to say the least, way back then, if he needs to have this complete control over other people, the women in his office. And the way it wasn't a sexual attack, but it was definitely an attack on women in his office. And
Yeah,
there is no reason. But I want to bring up something else that's on my mind that is unrelated to this. Unfortunately, I have attention deficit disorder, so I jump from one.
Try to stay on the topic, Carm, but go ahead.
Okay, well, maybe I'll bring it up later.
All right, we'll come back to it later. The murder weapon, you know, this is a great question. Phil Ramos, do we know if the murder weapon was ever retrieved in this case?
It's one of those things I can't comment on.
Okay.
I would expect that the answer will probably be yes.
All right,
but
there
don't
you go.
hold me to it.
This is the part. This is the part that is an extension of that question, and it's this: part of the murder weapon is obviously not just the knife, but what he used to subdue Gehrman. One would think in order to, and he's got DNA under his nails. So part of the murder weapon, it's not just somebody standing there stabbing away; it's grabbing him, and he's got Jeff Gehrman's DNA under his face, and Gehrman's got Tellis's. So. As I said, Tellis can sit up late at night thinking about how he's going to get this stuff suppressed. It's not going to happen. He's going to be in prison until he dies.
Yeah, for sure. Someone's asking, Mark, I don't know if you know the answer. I mean, he was married. Is he divorced now from this woman from 2020?
I don't know. A lot of times in this, it's like some sort of story where the spouse stands up, and usually it's so that they can get distance and they can't take houses and stuff like that. So even if it's as a direct result of she realizes that Tellis is a killer, or she's trying to protect the house from seizure and that sort of thing by survivors, I don't know. As I understand it, they're still married.
And Mark, I brought this photo up, and I don't want to put a spotlight on the killer, but I just found this photo to be pathetic in light of his crimes. I just wanted you to comment on it. What do you see when you see this picture?
I walk right into that office, and what his intent was to do to those poor women that he knew he had under his thumb. I see a human being would feel such sorrow for what he did just to them. He deserves that. This stupid look that he has on his face, that's just total BS. That's a sociopath. That's him caring about the one person that he cares about in this world, him.
Well said. So there's other details I just want to get to. So obviously the law enforcement officials in Las Vegas, among the best in the country. They discover, along with the Las Vegas Review-Journal, but this part was the police department. They get surveillance video from across the street that captures the attack. Video shows who police say is Robert Tellis walking into German's side yard, and he hides behind a gate. Remember, this is back Labor Day weekend, 2022. Moments later, an unsuspecting Jeff German, he opens his own garage door. By the way, he lived alone. He was not married, no children. So he opens the garage door. He walks to the side of the house at that point, and that is when police say he is ambushed by Robert Tellis wearing this ridiculous orange reflective shirt and large straw sun hat. They end up finding pieces of this outfit in Robert Tellis's garage. So that tells you he's not the brightest bulb in the box. And then the Las Vegas, the RJ photographer, the Review-Journal photographer, a guy named Kevin Cannon, the minute he saw this surveillance video and he sees him walking, he is reminded himself of a walking shot that he took of Robert Tellis when Jeff German interviewed him at his office, at this administrator's office, this public office that he held. It was amazing insight that this photographer said, hey, wait, I remember filming this guy, and this guy had the similar walk. And that is part of what led to the arrest. Phil Ramos, whether you're a police officer or investigative reporter or photographer, that's a pretty good recall to remember that you had filmed a guy who walked in a similar manner, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very good recall. And the thing about it is that everybody that had anything to do with media relations were like, what can we do to help? What can we do to help? And they were talking with anybody that would listen to them. And that was unique in and of itself, because, like I said, at first it was a whodunit until a couple hours into it, and everybody was pointing the finger. That being said, when we start investigating someone, you can't just focus on the first person that is brought up. The defense will tear that up. So you have to keep an open mind until the evidence takes you closer and closer and closer to the person you're looking at. So once the evidence started coming in, the physical evidence started coming in, and nobody else mentioned any other possible suspects, then they were able to focus 100% on Tellis, so that they didn't run that risk down the road of the defense saying, well, you only focused on him right away and you didn't look at anybody else, which is going to come up. I mean, the typical defense move is, how come you didn't look at everybody else that you were told was had it in for Jeff? And the answer to that is there was no evidence of anybody else wanting to do harm to Jeff, even regardless of what he had exposed in the years past. And reporters make enemies. And that's the nature of the job. It's a double-edged sword, but you have to be open-minded enough as an investigator to be able to answer those questions when they're asked of you. And those questions are coming down the road, but right away, everybody was pointing the fingers in one direction. And as you go in that direction, you have to be able to say why you didn't go in every direction that was presented to you. So, that's just, one of the things of the job.
And Phil, Carm, go ahead, Carm.
Well, I think that it's even more egregious when you kill a journalist, an investigative journalist, or any kind of journalist, because what is the role in society of a journalist? Is to tell the truth of what's going on. And if you kill the messenger of the truth, what stays? The lies? It's a very, very, very serious side story of the killing of an investigative reporter.
That's a good point. Someone's asking why Carm is not full screen. Ask and ye shall receive. Actually, let me take this down. And it'll take a second and it'll click us back full screen here. So just going on with some of the details of this, Mark Fierro, who's on the panel, said that, he drove his own car, and then he's photographed washing his car. When police did a digital forensics exam on his phone, he also found a death threat against Jeff German on his phone. He was tweeting things, Rob Tellis was, under the name Rob Tellis LV. One of the tweets was, looking forward to lying smear piece number 4 by Jeff German, called him a one-trick pony. And he says, I think he's mad that I haven't crawled into a hole and died. Wife hears rust. This is another tweet. He says, when he was married, wife hears rustling in the trash. Honey, is there a wild animal in the trash? No, dear. It looks like it's Jeff German going in through our trash for his 4th story. So, what about this part of it, Mark, that, he's also dumb enough as a public official to be tweeting these ridiculous things out that Carm always warns me, whatever goes on the internets stays there forever. So that's additional evidence. I mean, just how dumb is this guy who thinks he's brighter than everybody else?
It has a lot to do with that, seeing yourself as a king. I interviewed a bunch of serial killers, and certainly I'm not saying that Tellis was a serial killer, but it goes along with that idea that you're the smartest one in the pack and nobody is going to be able to figure this out. And therefore, you don't have to look at yourself at a distance and say, is this the stupidest thing in the world? You've got motive. Now you've got opportunity. Now they've got video. Now they got physical evidence connecting you. Goodbye. I appreciate the fact that he has a defense attorney. To his credit, he's doing everything he can, because that's the only way the system works, is when both sides are represented. No matter how low, no matter how horrible the person on the other side is, that America guarantees you that. That's the only way that all of our rights are protected, and even the lowliest scum. And when I'm saying that, I am in fact talking about Tellis. When their rights are protected, that's the only way that Americans' rights are protected. So, Draskevich, I think he's done as good a job as he can with a really, really stupid, inhuman client.
And what about the just the audacity, Mark, that he thought he'd be able to defend himself here? What do you make of that?
We do a lot of litigation support, and one of the attorneys that we work with got him as a client, and I called the attorney right away and I said, "This is great. I'm not going to work on this guy's case for 1 second under any circumstances. And if I have to, in order to work, I'm not working with you." And so we came to terms right away. I'm not working on his case. And that's when he decided that he was going to go pro per, which is evidence of a great big dummy. The old saying has an idiot for a client. First of all, criminal law is the toughest of all. Going up against Metro Police, these guys, whatever you think about police in general, just in general terms, the Metropolitan Police Department, they are at a very, very high level. And they, they would have taken this very seriously if the guy would have stolen Jeff's next door neighbor's car. Okay. I've had that interaction with them. They take these things seriously. This guy's not going anywhere. He can have his dreams at night. He can think whatever he's going to. They can point the finger at other people. I appreciate the fact that both sides are well represented in this. Tellis is in prison for the rest of his life.
By the way, there was a crime scene analyst who they thought might not be able to testify because of the past trial date. And she gave some testimony, which I'm going to get to in a moment. Mark, real quick, and I'm going to ask Phil about that. But Mark, why the continuance? Do we know why this was pushed all the way to August 5th?
I will say this. And Phil, correct me if I'm wrong. Whenever there's a homicide, okay, and they are in fact going to go to trial, you don't see those go to trial within the first year, okay? Generally speaking, when you have competent counsel, they get pushed out. One of the reasons the average person doesn't understand this is that counsel can say, I'm in trial on this, I'm in trial on this, and then I'm on trial on this, Your Honor. This is the first time that I have an opening to do this. So that's why you get these continuances that aren't like for a regular person. You go, let's go next week. It doesn't work that way. So generally speaking, just a run-of-the-mill, regular, contentious homicide where the defendant is in the pokey. Okay, because if they're out on bail, they'll continue it for 5 years. Some of the best known attorneys in any jurisdiction, but particularly in Las Vegas, are best known for getting continuances, not for beating the case. You get the guy another 5 years outside of life, and so there is nothing, I don't think, to be read into the continuances other than the fact that, Tellis is trying it. That's the cheap seats. I'm going to defend myself. No, you're not. I'm going to do it, and then keeps changing. And the reason they keeps changing, and this is not inside information, and this is not from our client who defended him at one point, but from what I understand, he's just a pretty difficult individual. He's got a great attorney now. If he's got a brain in his head, he'll stick with him. He's going to prison for the rest of his life.
Mark, Slackjaw says, I like this guy, Mark Fierro. Looks like Harrison Ford. Looks like Harrison Ford. There you go.
Time for glasses. Time for glasses. And I'm sorry, and I would never be this outspoken about his chances. And we don't do this to people, and I'm not into name calling, but I hate this man. I despise. You know what? I'll say this up front in case anybody hasn't caught on yet. They should not have me on the jury, okay?
He's a very easy man to dislike. Let me tell you that. If you watch the 48 Hours on this, there's something about his personality where he's very unlikable. And you have to see him in 3 dimensions, or at least on the TV, which is not 3 dimensions, but you have to see him speaking and acting. Carm, I'm coming to you in a moment. Do you, Joel, as a reporter from Rosemary Romero, ever feel that you can become a target of someone who does not like your investigation into their lives? The short answer is yes. Anytime you are public facing, someone can come at you. When I was at Fox 5 in New York City, I was on the investigative unit, and I did stories from air traffic controllers sleeping at the airport that Barack Obama was flying into, the Westchester Airport. They were sleeping on the job, and I thought the FAA, we had a whistleblower, I thought the FAA would not really appreciate that. It made me a little nervous. And then we did these basically homeless guys that were running an illegal grift at JFK Airport. And I remember one of them was not too happy that we were speaking and filming them, and basically threatened to kill me. And he was a big dude. So none of that seriously worried me. But I think Mark can tell you too that anytime you're public facing, people can come and go after you. There's a lot of crazy in this world. I just hope whatever the case is, no one ever goes after Carm, because then they will deal with the wrath of Phil Ramos. If they go after Carm, Phil Ramos, he has weapons in that house. He's going to take care of business. And by the way,
this topic came up before, and I said, by the time they come after me, I'm not going to be around. It's my last laugh, you know.
You don't know, Carm.
So when I was a reporter, Phil will back me up. He'll remember these names. The people that I did battle with when I was a reporter, what nicknamed the Ant, Fat Tony, Jackie the Lackey, Big Tuna. And if you think any of these guys are Irish, this was when they were at their zenith. So the FBI used to call us and tell us when somebody was pissed off and they were out of town, because if they were taking themselves out of town, that meant that they couldn't possibly be blamed for the murder. Wow.
The Ant doesn't seem like the friendliest guy. The Ant, they thought, may have been the guy who committed this crime at one point, I think. Space Coast, Carm, look at this. I hope this has you worried. He's uploading you into artificial intelligence. You will live on forever.
There you go.
So they can still get you. And Rosemary Romero says, don't worry, Carm. You'll have an army of fans protecting you. I want to get back to Ramos, and then we'll start to wind up. And Mark, I know you have a hard out.
I do, and I was just going to say, I've got to go, guys. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much, Phil. Good to see you, and I'll see you guys around. Let me know if I can be of any assistance in any way. Thank you.
Mark,
Thank
super quick question, Mark. I'm a diehard Coast to Coast fan. You must have worked with George Knapp.
Yes, absolutely. George Knapp was my best man at my first wedding, and we were colleagues. I got hired about 3 months before he did at Channel 8 News. We were all like this with Ned Day. And Ned, I'm sitting here looking at a picture of him in my office right now. I always go to the what would Ned do picture. Another reporter who died under mysterious circumstances. George is a great guy, a wonderful, wonderful guy, and I have loved working with him, both originally side by side as a colleague for 10 years, and then on the other side as a source. Some of those stories came from me, guys. I'm out. Thanks.
Okay, take care. Thanks so much, Mark. Bye-bye. So there we go. And now we're down to the three of us. I just want to go through some of this crime scene stuff. So there was a woman named Jennifer Manning. She's a crime scene analyst with the Metropolitan Las Vegas Police Department. Like I said, she provided testimony in court a few weeks ago because they thought there might be an issue with her actually testifying during the trial. And Phil, she said that Jeff's shirt had cuts on the front and back. And then Robert Tellis, curiously, had injuries on multiple fingers and a bruise on his right arm. She said that she photographed Jeff's body, swabbed his mouth, got those fingernail clippings. And a kind of a disturbing part of all this is that this is a little difficult to hear, but Jeff's clothing was so saturated with blood that they actually had to dry it in a biohazard drying cabinet. But Phil Ramos, whenever you guys are investigating, especially a stabbing death, and you have a possible suspect, you're going to have them take their shirt off and you're going to look at their hands. And in this case, he had cuts all over his fingers and this bruise. Blood, they say, becomes like oil. How strong is that evidence against him? There's no such thing, you guys say, as coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those pieces of direct physical evidence I was referring to, and there's a number of others. People often say, well, if he was doing the stabbing, how come his hands are cut? And in not referring to this case at all, but in general, when you have a stabbing and there's a fight, the victim is fighting back, fighting for his life, you're going to get some of those, especially when that knife gets so soaked with blood that your hand starts to slip when you're stabbing like this. And that's how a lot of the injuries get inflicted on the person doing the stabbing, or the victim is fighting back so hard that he's able to maneuver that knife in such a way that it cuts the suspect. And it's DNA can be found just about anywhere, and in this case it was found in a lot of places.
And Phil, I'm just looking for, I had it right, this prosecutor who's going to be prosecuting the case, a woman named Pamela Weckerly. Do you know anything about her? Is she a tough prosecutor?
She is double tough, man. I had many cases with her, and I wouldn't even want to arm wrestle her. She's a bulldog. I mean, she doesn't let go and she doesn't stop it. And she is one of the best prosecutors I've had the pleasure of working with, because she's so go get them and bury. I mean, she'll stand face to face with the gangbanger and tell him, I'm putting your ass in prison, and take a look at my face, because next time you see it, I'm going to be smiling when they lock the door behind you. She's very tough, very competent, very, very good at prosecutor.
And do you know this defense attorney, a guy named Robert Draskovich? And keep in mind, again, Tellis was defending himself until this guy, Robert Draskovich, stepped in. Do you know anything about him?
Yeah, he's a very good defense attorney, former prosecutor. He prosecuted some of my cases when I was in homicide and in intelligence. He's a good defense attorney, but he doesn't have a lot to work with. And that's one of the reasons you see these delays, because they want to put this off as long as they can, because he knows once it starts rolling and that DNA evidence comes in, it's going to be very, very hard for him to defend that, which is why he's going to look for all kinds of other things to try and, bring up that reasonable doubt. But there's very little chance that that's going to happen.
And Phil, lastly on my list here, the defense, this guy Draskovic has a very uphill battle, but some of his arguments, which I would describe as kind of weak or lame, is he says that this Manning person, the crime scene person from Las Vegas Metropolitan PD, that she quote unquote never measured the cuts on the shirt, so they don't know how they would be compared to a murder weapon. Is that, I mean, that sounds ridiculous to me. And then he went on to say, well, Tellis didn't have scratches on his body, but he had cuts on his finger and a bruise on his arm. Does it matter that he doesn't have scratches on his body, Phil?
No, because he was wearing long sleeves. That's why he doesn't have scratches on his body. But what here's a perfect example of when you can't attack the evidence, you attack the evidence collectors. So you try and make them look incompetent or full of mistakes when the points that he's bringing up are frivolous. You can't get a good accurate measurement of the size of a blade when it goes through cloth, because cloth is so pliable, it's going to tear the fibers enough that there's no way to tell if it's a 1/2-inch blade or a 1-inch blade. You know, when you tear a piece of clothing, you tear your t-shirt, you tear your long sleeve, it's not going to tear clean. It's going to be frayed, and there's just no way to get an accurate measurement.
The other thing that struck me, go ahead, Carmen, before, because I'm going to forget, Carmen. Remember your thought.
You do this, and then I'll do that.
Okay, remember your thought, Carmen. Remember your thought. She has senior moments, as she says. But Phil, one of the things that someone said about this, this costume he's wearing on the left hand, that is Robert Tellis in what is supposed to be like a landscaper outfit, is when you look at it, there's literally not a piece of dirt on it. It looks like fresh out of the box. Like, it doesn't look like he's ever worked a day in his life. Is this something that you would, I wouldn't have noticed that because I'm not an investigator, but is this something that your peers at the homicide department are going to be looking at right away? So look at this. It's completely clean. He put this on just as a charade, but this guy never worked a day in other words, did you know this guy was not a real landscaper or construction worker?
Well, yeah. I mean, you could tell that from looking at him. Plus, you're looking at carrying over his right shoulder is a satchel, looks like a briefcase type piece of equipment. And if I was to guess, I would say that's probably how the murder weapon was brought to the scene and probably how it left the scene. The fact that there's no blood on that shirt is indicative of he changed. And that was how he felt he was going to blend into the area, because there were landscapers present in the neighborhood. And he thought, well, I'm just going to make myself look like one of them.
By the way, Tellis did not win re-election, if anyone was wondering, and now he's going to have to run for office in prison, I think. Carm, what was that thought you had? I hope you didn't forget.
That's so funny that you saying that, because that's exactly, how I always run ahead. I wrote down here, lost election. My question was, if you remember this, did he commit the murder after he lost the re-election? Because Tellis was elected, then he behaved horribly, and then nobody would touch him because he was an elected official of the county, so nobody considered firing him, and then he was up for election. So I don't know if the murder happened before or after this election.
I do not know the answer. Phil, do you happen to have an idea? Because I know he did run again, but he lost.
Yeah, it was before the murder. Was committed before the re-election.
The murder was committed before the re-election. Oh, there you go. So there you go. Look at this. Another Carm fan here. Well, listen, this is a drop in the bucket with Jeff German. He was sadly taken from us at just age 69 back on Labor Day 2022 by a crazed person. Police say it is Robert Tellis, and he is going to go on trial August 5th, and that's a trial that I most certainly would like to cover. And I hope that people give it more attention. This guy, he put his life on the line for his job. And again, You heard Mark Fierro saying they covered, including Jeff German, all sorts. Las Vegas was a major place for the mob, and they covered all sorts of mobsters, including the Ant and these other guys. By the way, Phil Ramos, did you ever hang with any of these guys? You infiltrated the Cuban mob, but would you ever come across the Ant, any of these other guys? And what was your relationship, if so, with all of them?
Well, they thought my name was Ray Garcia and I was part of a Colombian drug cartel. So yeah, I came across him. And when Mark was referring to the Ant, he's talking about Tony Spilotro. In the movie Casino, he was the guy that got killed and beat to death and put in a cornfield, which really happened to him back in the 80s. So he was a very bad guy and was responsible for a number of murders, but he became so out there. He was just, one of the things the mob insists on is keeping a low profile, and they don't want you drawing attention to yourself because of the repercussions from that. So when Spilotro started becoming a mob Vegas spokesperson and being in everybody's face, they said, we can't let this happen. And he and his brother were buried in a cornfield after they were beat to death. They made Tony watch his brother get beat to death, and then they beat him to death.
Wow.
That's the way the mob works.
Yeah. Did they ever know that Ray Garcia was really homicide detective Phil Ramos? Did that ever?
Yeah, I wasn't a homicide detective then. I was
Right.
deep undercover then, and that was my undercover name. So eventually, over the years, and after trials and stuff like that, they realized, hey, this Ray Garcia guy isn't who we thought he was. He's actually an undercover cop, and that was the reason I had 2 contracts put out on me because of that. Well, Ray Garcia had 2 contracts put out on him.
Wow. Someone just
And
asked,
how
Phil,
how did you survive those? Somebody's asking if you ever wrote a book about it. How did you survive two
contract
hits?
killings?
Well, actually, I barely survived one. I was on my way home in my undercover car, and when you're on your way home, you take a circuitous route to get back, and a car pulled up next to me at about 2:00 in the morning, and as the light turns, I hear gunshots, and they go through my back window, and I did some defensive driving, and they took off, and that was their attempt to take me out. Once it got that ugly, there was a couple of meetings between some of our higher ups. Some of our big bad guys went to visit their big bad guys, and after that, it was understood that it wouldn't be a good idea to start a war with the cops by killing one of them.
That is insane. Jerry Michael, does Phil Ramos fear for his life even now? Are there days, Phil, or do you still look around over your shoulder? Are those days far gone now?
Those days are far gone, but you never know. You can't dwell on it. You can't keep it in the forefront. You just become very aware of your surroundings, and if somebody doesn't look right, you tend to take a little bit of a defensive posture and keep an eye on someone. But I think if they were going to come and find me with the way things are today, they would have been able to find me. I think that's pretty much it. Besides, all the people that were in that are no longer around anyway. So,
by the way, this is a whole separate show, but I could talk about this for 9 hours. We talked about some of it on Surviving My Biggest Case with Phil Ramos. Analytical Blarney AB, friend of the show. She wants to know where you got the name Ray Garcia.
That was my father's best friend who was killed in a aircraft crash when I was young, and I remember seeing my dad sit up in bed when he got the news. I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and seeing my dad break down and cry because his best friend was killed really left a mark on me. And his name was Ray Garcia, so I adopted that name in memory of Ray.
And Phil, is there a book about your life?
Not that I know of.
Would you be? I'm gonna introduce you to my publisher. I think there has to be a book about Phil Ramos. So I'm gonna, if, with your permission, I'm gonna introduce you. And Ida Shaw here, Carm, quel est votre nickname pour votre fils Joël?
Oh, okay. I don't have a nickname for him. I had a nickname for his father, whose name was Roy, and the joke was that I called him sometimes Joe because I said Roy is too long. But Joel, I sometimes call. Can I embarrass Joel on air?
It's been done before, many a time.
I call Joelle.
Joelle, Joel. Ha 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 about Joel's French. Well, listen, every time we have Phil Ramos on, I love it. The guy's got stories for days, and he is, as they say, one cool cat. He's a retired senior homicide detective with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, 35 years of service, 15 years in homicide. He infiltrated the Cuban mob. He worked alongside these mobsters, trying to get information about them. 3-time Officer of the Year, a native Las Vegan, and the list goes on. He rides his Harley, as you can tell from his shirt, and he was there for Tupac Shakur's autopsy. Phil Ramos, by the way, is P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs. Is he in some serious trouble right now? They're raiding all his homes. Would they be doing this if they didn't have some sort of case against him?
No, he's in a world of trouble, man. When it's going to come out, who knows? But I saw a comment on there that somebody said Donnie Brasco was their favorite movie. In Donnie Brasco, there's a scene where they come out to Vegas and do some fooling around. And in real life, I was part of the undercover crew that helped Donnie Brasco do some stuff here in Las Vegas. It's a short scene. It's not that big of a scene, but that actually happened. And Ray Garcia was one of the guys that was part of that.
Carm, let me ask you this again. I asked you this at the beginning, and I'm going to ask you at the end. It's a Wednesday afternoon. We're having some fun. By the way, in 44 minutes, less than that, 41 minutes, the COE, the notorious COE, is going to be interviewing Ruth Markel. So stay tuned for that. Carm, if I was Phil Ramos and I was infiltrating mobsters and I was doing all this, and I had contracts out on my life and that was my job, how concerned would you be as my mother?
I have a question before that. Mr. Ramos, did your mother know what you were doing?
That's a great question. I was going to ask that too.
She knew what I was doing, but she never knew about the contracts or anything like that. It would have scared her to death. She would have said, "Get out of that job." And I was having too much fun to get out of that job. And of course my appearance changed. Because when I was deep undercover, I had the beard and long hair and drove a Mercedes and had an undercover apartment and all that. So she knew that I was doing something undercover. She just didn't know the extent of it.
Carm, if there was a contract out on me, do you think I would share that with you or keep it a secret?
Are you kidding me? The minute you got the contract, you would say, "Can you explain to me this, please?"
All right, don't embarrass me that much. Yeah, I'd be like, can you read line 1A of the contract and tell me what you by the way, special shout out goes to Mark Fierro. He seems like a very cool dude. He is a media PR whiz, and he was a former CBS reporter, anchor, all those things. And he's a friend of George Knapp's, who's a big UFO guy. And by the way, this is a good comment. Coming back full circle here. I'm in Nigeria for Marianne, praying for Sebastian Rogers' father because the mom and stepdad are doing nothing. That's another story that we've been covering. Sebastian Rogers, a 15-year-old with autism, went missing on February 25th. Today is March 27th, a month and 2 days, and he's still missing. So we are going to stay on the story. We love Carm. Nothing gets by her. Again, I love having Ramos on the show. And What else can I say? I love having Carm on the show. Carm, how was your triumphant return? Was it all that you wished for?
I'm sad that I was not here for a while because I really enjoyed this.
By the way, this is a lesser profile story nationally than some of the other ones. So Carm, after this, is going to say that I give her the lower profile stories and that the numbers are not as high. Is that what you're going to say to me, Carm?
No, this time I'm not going to say it. I'll just think it.
You'll just think it. Excellent. Ramos, she's always a step ahead of me. What can I tell you? On that note, love you, America. The notorious COE back in, I can't do the math, 38 minutes with Ruth Markel. Big thanks to Phil Ramos, Mark Fierro, and of course, my dear beloved mother, Carm. And
by the way, Joel, just for the record, you are the best son.
Thank you. Are you going to thank me for? Not many sons write books about their mother, Carm, while they're still alive and kicking. So
it's true.
If you want Carm to write a custom inscription, it is at signsurvivorbook.com. We'll see you tomorrow, either 5 p.m. Eastern or 7. We're still working out the details of that show. Huge thanks to Phil. Phil and Carm, stick around for 1 second. Love you, America. Love you, Las Vegas. Love you, Miami Beach, Florida. And let's think about Jeff German in the middle there today. He did not deserve to go out the way he did.